My fiancé invited my high school bully to our wedding as a funny surprise, so I surprised him back by canceling the entire wedding. Hey Reddit. I never thought I'd be one of those people writing a novel-length post about my relationship problems, but here we are. If things had gone as expected, I would be on my honeymoon right now instead of writing a stupid post on Reddit to get perspective from people I don't even know. I should be in Greece right now with a man I considered the love of my life before he betrayed my trust and stabbed me in the back in the worst way possible. Just a little background on me: I'm 29, work as a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized tech company, and I live in an apartment that I was supposed to share with my now ex-fiancé after we got married. We even have this adorable rescue cat named Oliver who's been watching me cry into my wine glass every night for the past week like, lady, get it together. He's the only male I can trust right now, TBH. I was supposed to marry Duncan, 28M, with whom I had been in a relationship for 3 years. The relationship was never problematic, or so I thought, so I never anticipated that something like this could happen. In fact, it was one of the best relationships I had compared to my previous ones. We met at a friend's housewarming party. I spilled my drink on his shirt, he made a joke about it, and we ended up talking all night on the balcony while everyone else was inside playing drinking games. It felt like one of those meet cutes from a rom-com, you know? We moved in together after a year, and everything just clicked. We had our little routines: Sunday morning pancakes, Friday night movie marathons where we'd alternate who got to pick. He always chose terrible sci-fi, I always went for psychological thrillers, and we'd take weekend trips to this little cabin by the lake every few months. Maybe I overreacted and made a big fuss over nothing, or at least, that's what he considers it, calling it an innocent joke. But let me tell you about the backstory so you can understand why this joke was anything but innocent to me. In high school, there was a guy named Aaron who bullied a lot of people. He was good at sports, somewhat dumb in other aspects, and needlessly cruel. There was no reason for him to be so evil and wild. I know there's a general tendency to look for tragic backstories and try to redeem every villain you come across, thanks, Disney, but Aaron had absolutely no redeeming qualities. He was simply pathetic, disgusting, and empty-headed. Honestly, with the things he did in school, he should be rotting in some kind of juvenile detention center. He'd target anyone he saw as weak or different. For me, it started because I corrected him once in English class when he was giving a presentation. Not to be a know-it-all, but the teacher actually asked if anyone could help him with a definition, and I raised my hand. That was it. That's all it took for him to make my life hell for the next 2 years. The problem was that his father was a powerful figure in our town. We come from a small town, like, one movie theater, everyone knows everyone small, so no one could do anything about it. His dad was on the town council and owned the largest car dealership in the county. Everyone at school knew Aaron was a bully, and no one had the courage to stand up to him, not even the teachers. One day, I had enough and went to the school principal to complain. I was shaking as I sat in that office with its weird inspirational posters and the smell of coffee and photocopier toner. The principal, Mr. Williams, listened, nodding and making notes. He told me he would investigate and do something about it. I left feeling like maybe, just maybe, someone was finally taking this seriously. A month passed, and nothing happened. Aaron hadn't stopped. So I knew the principal had done nothing. My locker was still getting vandalized, people were still accidentally knocking my books out of my hands in the hallway, always when Aaron was watching, and the whispers and laughs still followed me everywhere. I went back to the office, this time with my dad. My dad is usually pretty chill, he's this laid-back engineer type who would rather solve problems with logic than confrontation. But that day? He was livid. I'd never seen him like that before. My dad forced the principal to file a written complaint so that it would be on record. At the time, I was too young to understand, but now I get it. My dad knew that if we tried to escalate the situation outside of school, the principal could simply claim that I had never come to him with a complaint. So my dad made sure we created a paper trail that couldn't be denied. I remember my dad's hand on my shoulder, squeezing it reassuringly as Mr. Williams reluctantly filled out the form. Things got serious. Aaron was called into the office, and his father was summoned. His father didn't show up, too busy, you know. The next day, they called his mother, but she didn't show up either. This happened 3 times, and neither parent ever came. So in the end, it all came down to the principal giving Aaron a verbal warning that this behavior shouldn't continue and that if it did, the school would have to take action against him. Everyone knew the school wouldn't take action against him. More importantly, Aaron knew that no one could touch him. He was untouchable. That was the moment the bullying escalated exponentially. Before, it had just been insults and things like that, but now it turned into actual pranks. He bribed the cafeteria worker to put a cockroach in my food. I still remember lifting my fork and seeing that thing wiggling there between the tater tots. I screamed, and the entire cafeteria erupted in laughter. I ran out in tears while Aaron high-fived his friends. He put gum on my usual classroom seat, staining all my clothes. My mom had to buy me new pants because the stain wouldn't come out. Do you know how expensive it is to replace clothes when you're a family just getting by? We weren't poor, but we weren't rich either. Every penny counted, and Aaron knew that. He was clever with his actions. He didn't physically or verbally assault me, nothing that could get him in trouble, but he resorted to some kind of twisted psychological torture that, for some reason, was hilarious to everyone else in his circle. Every time I tried to complain, people called me a buzzkill and uptight, saying I had no sense of humor. There was this one time during gym class when he replaced the shampoo in my gym bag with hair removal cream. I didn't notice until I was already in the shower. Thankfully, I realized something was off before any real damage was done, but I had to skip the next period to wash it out completely. When I tried to report it, the gym teacher just said, "How do you know it was Aaron? Did you see him do it?" Of course I hadn't seen him do it, that was the whole point. Overall, the experience was horrible. And even though it was a decade ago, I still have nightmares about it sometimes. I hate Aaron with every fiber of my being. There's no way I'll ever forgive him, even if he has changed, which according to some, he has. I don't care. I don't owe him forgiveness, and I will never, never forgive him. Aaron became part of my past, a part that I buried deep when I went to college. I moved to another state, graduated, and I have never had any contact with him or communicated with him since then. We have a few mutual friends on social media, so I would occasionally see him in group photos, but that was the extent of it for me. The chapter on Aaron closed the moment I left school. And although I'm still traumatized by what he put me through, I mentally tried to leave those memories and that part of my life behind. When I met Duncan about 3 years ago, we connected quickly. He was charming, attentive, and seemed to understand me in a way no one else had before. He'd bring me coffee in bed on weekend mornings. He remembered little details about things I mentioned in passing, like my favorite childhood book or how I can't stand the smell of bananas. He got along great with my parents, which was a huge plus since my dad is usually pretty skeptical of any guy I date. We had our routines that made life feel comfortable and secure. Wednesday was always takeout night because we were both too tired to cook midweek. Sunday mornings were for pancakes and lazy Netflix binges. We'd go hiking with our friends Eloise and her boyfriend Mark every other Saturday. It all felt so normal, so stable. However, 6 months into our relationship, he tried to pull a funny prank on me. He was the self-proclaimed prankster of his group, and was quite proud of it. I had noticed this in the first few weeks of our relationship. He'd do harmless things like hiding his roommate's keys or replacing the sugar with salt when his friends came over for coffee. However, I made it very clear that I didn't like pranks and that they only triggered bad memories for me. He seemed to understand, but 6 months later, he tried to pull a prank on me. It was supposed to be a fake breakup text that would lead to some elaborate surprise for our 6-month anniversary. I found out beforehand and foiled his plans. One of his friends, who I'd become close with, gave me a heads up, thinking I was in on it. We had the biggest fight of our relationship at that moment, and I was very close to breaking up with him. I told him that if he couldn't respect such a basic request from me, then I had no words, and he could do whatever he wanted, but I wasn't going to stay in that mess. It was an ugly fight because he said it wasn't a big deal and that I needed to develop a sense of humor. Things got even worse, and I started having horrible flashbacks from school. That was when I broke down and told him what had happened to me in high school. I told him everything about Aaron, about the cockroach in my food, about the hair removal cream, about how no one would help me. I cried as I recounted the humiliation and helplessness. He went silent for a moment and then apologized sincerely. He said he had no idea what I had been through and that he was very sorry. He seemed genuine, and I thought I should give him the benefit of the doubt since he didn't know about my trauma regarding pranks. This was 2.5 years ago, and he never pranked me again. Until the day of our wedding. Honestly, I had completely forgotten about that incident. I had no reason to remember it. I know it was a huge fight, but we resolved things, and he seemed truly remorseful. So we moved past it. Now on the day of the wedding, everything was going well. It was a small ceremony we had planned with a few friends and family, and I was very happy. We'd spent almost a year planning it, nothing extravagant, but everything was thoughtful and personal. My dress was simple but elegant, I splurged on it, not gonna lie. We'd written our own vows. Our first dance was going to be To It Last by Etta James because we'd heard it on our first official date. Duncan had mentioned a few weeks ago that he had invited a special guest to the wedding, but I didn't think much of it. I thought it would be his grandmother, whom I adore. She's a sweetheart and had told us she wouldn't be able to come because of her hip surgery. I figured he had somehow managed to get her to come after all, maybe arranged special transportation or something. It was half an hour before I was supposed to walk down the aisle. I was in the bridal suite with my mom, putting the final touches on my makeup. I was nervous but excited. My hands were shaking a little as I tried to put on my earrings. They were my something borrowed, from my mom's jewelry box. A million things were running through my mind. Did the florist remember the last-minute changes? Was the DJ clear on the no Macarena policy? Did I remember to give the ring to the best man? I tried calling Eloise, my maid of honor, but the call wouldn't go through. I got a little nervous, calmed myself, and then called Samantha, one of my bridesmaids. Same thing. The call wouldn't go through. I tried Mia, another bridesmaid, and got the same result. At this point, alarm bells were ringing in my head. I called Jonah, Duncan's best man. He told me he couldn't see anyone from my bridal party, essentially, the bridesmaids and my maid of honor, and that he was about to call me to see if everything was okay. I asked my mom, who was with me at that moment, to call my dad to find out what was happening. She came back completely shaken, saying that no one had any idea where the girls were. At that point, I was hyperventilating and genuinely terrified because I couldn't reach anyone. The worst scenarios were running through my mind. What if there had been an accident? What if something terrible had happened to my closest friends? I asked Jonah not to tell Duncan because I didn't want to worry him. What I didn't know was that this was his plan all along. I tried sneaking into the wedding hall to figure out what was happening. And what I saw is what brings us to this post. Aaron was standing at the entrance, chatting and laughing with some of Duncan's friends like he belonged there. I don't remember anything else. I just remember gasping and collapsing to the ground. I was completely frozen. I couldn't move my body, and some people had to carry me away. There was a lot of commotion in the following minutes. I remember that. I vaguely remembered Duncan approaching me. He was worried, I admit. But when I recovered, I don't even know how much time had passed, he started laughing. He said I should have seen my face and that it was the best prank he had pulled in years. I looked at him in disbelief. By then, my maid of honor and the bridesmaids had arrived, so I asked them where they had been. They said they had been locked in a room and couldn't use their phones. Duncan was the one who called them there and even took some of their phones away. Aaron was the one who locked them in. I spoke with Eloise. She has been my friend since high school and knows everything about Aaron. I asked her why he was there, and she told me that Aaron was the special guest Duncan had mentioned. Even at that moment, I didn't understand what they were saying. So I asked everyone to leave and told Duncan the first wanted to talk to him. He said we could talk after the ceremony because it was already getting late. I asked him why Aaron was there. The thing is, he knew who Aaron was. I had shown him pictures from school, so it wasn't like he had no idea who Aaron was. Apparently, Aaron got a job in the same office building as Duncan, and they really hit it off a few months ago. When Aaron found out that I was Duncan's fiancé, he was thrilled because he thought that since we had a friendly history together, things would be even better. I asked Duncan why he encouraged Aaron or even befriended him, and his response was that Aaron had actually told him the truth about what had happened. According to Aaron, he wasn't a bully but rather a prankster, and I used to be very sensitive. That's why Duncan decided it would be best for Aaron to come to the wedding so we could make peace. I was too stunned to speak. I don't know what happened to me, but I took off my ring and handed it to him. I told him we were done and that there would be no wedding. Everything went to hell. I left, announced that the wedding was cancelled, thanked everyone for coming, and simply left with my family. I really don't know how my friends handled the mess after that, but they did. And they haven't told me what they did because they don't want to stress me out. That was last week, and Duncan has gone crazy. He has been bombarding my phone, my parents' phones, but I've simply ignored him. Even his family has tried to contact me. I've been in no contact these past few days, and I can't even think straight. To make matters worse, he has been slandering me all over social media. Saying things like I couldn't handle a single joke, that I was rude, and so on. It's a mess, and I really don't know how I got into this situation. Things were perfect between us, and it wasn't supposed to be like this. I don't know what led him to pull that prank. I don't even know what led me to make that decision. I saw Aaron, and everything came rushing back. I think that even at that moment, I hadn't thought about canceling the wedding. When I heard Duncan's excuse and justification for what he did, I simply lost control. I couldn't believe that the man who had known me for so long, whom I had trusted, and to whom I had shared the most traumatic part of my life suddenly decided to believe my abuser over me. He had no reason to do it. He hadn't even told me that Aaron worked in the same building. To me, even associating with him was wrong. But maybe I'm overreacting, because on social media, Duncan has been insulting me. Everyone is saying, "We met at a cafe I used to love, now ruined for me, thanks Duncan." I arrived early and chose a table near the door and in full view of the baristas, old habits from my post-Aaron high school days. I ordered a latte that I barely touched, just to have something to do with my hands. The meeting was pretty bad, to put it simply. I had hoped, stupidly, I admit, that he would at least have some remorse. That he would have used this time to reflect and understand why I reacted the way I did. But no. He was the same arrogant person as always, and I had had enough of him. He started by saying that I had overreacted and embarrassed him in front of everyone. He also said that it wasn't such a serious prank and that it certainly didn't justify such an exaggerated reaction. I let him talk as much as he wanted, and then I dismantled his argument piece by piece. I told him that the fact that he even invited Aaron to the wedding was beyond bizarre. Why on earth would you bring my abuser on the day that was supposed to be the most special of my life? He had the audacity to mock me and say, "Oh yes, I know what a big bad abuser he was," in a sarcastic tone. Never in my life did I imagine that he would stoop to this level and say something so cruel, but, well, maybe I had never seen this side of him before. It took all the strength I had not to jump across the table and slap him in the face. The cafe was busy with a lunch crowd, and I could feel curious glances our way as our voices rose. I told him that if he believed a complete stranger over me, the woman he wanted to marry, then I had nothing, absolutely nothing, left to say to him, and that I was glad I had cancelled the wedding. He looked annoyed by all of this, and I think he was still treating the situation like a minor fight and not a breakup. He said I was looking for drama and needed to calm down and talk logically. I told him there was nothing left to talk about between us because we saw this completely differently. Besides, he chose to believe my abuser, invited him to the wedding. For what? Cheap laughs? No one found it funny except him. It wasn't even a good prank. This wasn't putting plastic wrap over the toilet seat, this was emotional torture. Then he said something even more out of line. He said he was willing to forgive me and take me back despite my silly antics, but I needed to publicly admit that I had been wrong. He kept insisting that I needed to stop taking all of this so seriously. I had had enough. He was being an idiot, and I had no interest in continuing the conversation with him. The more he talked, the more I realized I dodged a bullet by not marrying him. I simply told him that we could divide our belongings and end this so we could move on with our lives. His attitude changed in an instant. It was honestly pathetic to watch. He started begging me to reconsider, saying he had made a mistake and so on. The change was disgusting because I knew it wasn't genuine. I told him that if he was only now realizing how serious this was, then he was an immature child. I told him we were done and that I was not going to reconcile with him. He begged me to sit down and talk more like adults, but I had already said everything I needed to say. I left the cafe and felt a little better. Still, he kept texting me, apologizing and saying he now realized he was wrong. Of course, now he realizes it. What's the point of realizing it now? He never should have pulled that joke, especially not at my wedding. Now it's useless for him to realize things. And honestly, I don't even believe he's sincere. It's not easy to go from being about to marry someone you've been with for 3 years, someone you planned a future with, to suddenly ending it all. But at the same time, not a single part of me, my mind or my body, wants to be with him. He made sure of that by working so hard to make me lose all respect for him. And for me, there's no coming back from that. So, yeah, there go 3 years and there goes everything else. But at least I can sleep at night knowing that I made the right decision for myself. Also, just so you know, I did get Oliver in the breakup. There was no way I was leaving my cat with him. Oliver's been my emotional support through all of this, demanding cuddles and purring on my lap while I cry. He's the real MVP. Update 2. I followed the advice of many of you here and decided to clear things up myself. After my meeting with Duncan, he acted clingy and desperate for a few days, then disappeared completely. I thought maybe he had finally understood that our relationship was over for good and that common sense had prevailed. I was wrong. I got a frantic call from Eloise, who told me that Duncan had posted a long sob story on both Facebook and Instagram for the whole world to see. It was a very one-sided, malicious attempt to gain sympathy, and my level of respect for him dropped into the negatives after reading what he wrote. Basically, he called me all sorts of names and told the world that I was the cause of his heartbreak because I was jealous that he was making new friends, meaning Aaron. He tried to paint me as a bad, crazy, controlling partner, writing things like how I had always been like this and that he had to cut ties with friends and acquaintances because of me. That never happened. He tried to portray me as a toxic woman who had problems with anyone who wasn't me, to the point that I was insecure about a friend he made at work. And the worst part, according to him, was that the friend was a man, so there was no chance of anything happening between them. He pretended to be all good and submissive in the post, saying he would have understood, even given in, if the friend had been a woman. But since I was acting this way over a male friend, to the point of canceling the wedding and refusing to reconcile, it showed that I was selfish, insecure, and narcissistic. He threw together any word he could find and tried to smear me in the worst possible way. I never thought he could stoop this low, but he proved me wrong once again. The cherry on top? He went through our photos and posted ones where I looked less than flattering, mid-blink, mouth open while eating, you know the kind, as if to subtly suggest I was unattractive on top of everything else. Real classy, Duncan. I knew I had to do something to control the damage. This was getting completely out of hand, and it was time for me to go on the offensive, or he would just make everything he did seem justified and turn himself into the victim of the whole situation. It took me an entire day to organize my thoughts and write my response. I was shaking as I typed, reliving the whole ordeal again was traumatic, but I knew I needed to set the record straight. I had Eloise read it over before I posted it, just to make sure I wasn't saying anything I'd regret. The post is too long to copy here, but it really just says what I already mentioned in my original post. I made sure to include the part where I explain how I was harassed by his new friend in school, and how I had told him early in our relationship that I had an aversion to these kinds of pranks. I didn't mince words. I didn't try to be nice about it, but I also didn't lie. Every word I put out there for the world to see was the truth, and that was exactly what Duncan couldn't handle. Saying the post blew up would be an understatement. All the people who were crying over how angelic Duncan was and comforting him were now flooding my messages with apologies and trying to make amends. I was bombarded with texts and calls. Surprisingly, none from Duncan. I only received one message from him the next day calling me a stupid dog, and that was it. Then I blocked his number because I don't need him in my life, and I certainly don't need more of this drama. The surprising part was that his mother reached out to me. I've always liked her. She's a nice woman, although we haven't interacted enough to consider ourselves close. She told me she had heard a very different story from Duncan and regretted not asking me first. She said she had believed her son and now realized that was a mistake. She apologized on his behalf, and I told her she didn't have to. Of all the people who reached out to me, her apology and message felt the most genuine, and she didn't even have to apologize. To be honest, it wasn't her fault. It was his. He's a grown man who makes his own decisions. In this case, very bad decisions. Thankfully, I haven't heard anything from Aaron, and I know I won't. If he still had the audacity to show up in front of me and pull that stupid prank on my wedding day, I can pretty accurately estimate how much he has matured over the years, 0. The narrative has now changed, and people are boycotting Duncan, not only for being an idiot but also for lying, especially to gain sympathy points on social media and support from strangers on the internet. My phone has been blowing up with messages from former mutual friends who want to let me know they're on my side now. It's exhausting, to be honest. I just want it all to stop. It's sad how things turned out for him. It's also sad for me because the adrenaline from all this drama will fade soon, and I fear that because that's when I'll have to face reality. It's not something that can be avoided, and now I think it's time to rip off the band-aid. I've spent too long either swimming or drowning in this damn mess. It's time to get out of it. I owe it to myself, to my parents, and to my friends who have stood by me through all of this. Thank you to all of you who supported me and helped me stand firm in my decision. I was so close to going back to Duncan when I first posted. I'm so glad I didn't. I'm glad I didn't let him make me think I was overreacting. I just hope things get better from here. Oliver and I are moving to a new apartment next month, smaller, but it's all mine, and it has a little balcony where I can have morning coffee without any memories of Duncan. Baby steps, you know? Update 3. I'm going on a trip. Duncan and I had originally planned to go on a honeymoon after the wedding. Well, this isn't a honeymoon anymore, but I spent a considerable amount of money on the reservations, so I thought, why not? I'm going on a solo trip to Southeast Asia. The tickets were flexible, so I was able to change them. As for the hotel bookings, I was able to cancel some and not others, but at least I got back part of what I had invested in the trip. I know it might sound strange to many of you, but I need a break. After being in a relationship for 3 years, I need to reset and, more importantly, rediscover how to do things on my own. I've never traveled alone before. Duncan and I did everything together. I planned our weekend getaways, he handled the logistics, and we were always a team. Now I need to figure out how to be just me again. I even got a new haircut yesterday, chopped off 6 inches and got highlights. It's amazing how a simple change can make you feel like a new person. My mom says it's too drastic, but I think it's exactly what I needed. A physical representation of the internal changes I'm going through. I haven't had any contact with him now, which makes me feel really relieved. I need this trip to get back on track and clear my mind. The situation isn't ideal, but I need to learn how to make the best of it. My suitcase is packed. Oliver is staying with my parents, who will spoil him rotten, and I'm leaving tomorrow. I'll update you all when I get back. Wish me luck. Update 4. For those who ask how my trip went, the answer is, it was amazing. I had never traveled alone before, let alone abroad, but it didn't feel so bad after all. I joined 2 other girls who were also traveling through Asia, and we got to share part of our journey together. We did things I never would have done with Duncan, like spontaneously changing our itinerary to stay longer in Thailand because we loved it so much, or taking a cooking class in Vietnam where I learned to make the most incredible spring rolls. Duncan was always so rigid about sticking to plans. This freedom to just go with the flow was exhilarating. In these months since returning from my trip, I've discovered something thanks to my bridesmaids. If you want a top-tier gossip network to stay informed, you need well-connected friends. For starters, I haven't had any further contact with Duncan. Our last interaction was that message where he called me stupid, and that was it. He's been blocked, and he hasn't tried to reach out in any other way. But let's talk about his life and the things I found out, especially concerning his best friend, Aaron. Can you guess who Aaron played a prank on? Yes. Duncan himself. And it wasn't a fun prank. Not even remotely appropriate for their age. Aaron thought it would be absolutely hilarious to fill balloons with water and colored dye and throw them at Duncan before he went into work. Well, it was hilarious for everyone except Duncan. Duncan was already under a lot of stress that day because he had to meet with a client. And showing up with wet, pink-stained pants wasn't exactly professional. His boss got mad at him for it, even though Duncan tried to explain. And now he's on thin ice at work. Duncan told his boss that his friend had played a prank on him. But his boss asked, "What kind of friend plays a prank like that on you?" Well, Duncan and Aaron aren't as close as they used to be anymore. I don't know why Duncan is being such a buzzkill and uptight about this. He loved pranks. He should be laughing along with his friend and buying him a beer to celebrate the hilarious prank he pulled on him. Can you sense my sarcasm? In other news, I found out that Duncan had doubts about getting married before the wedding. He might be saying this now because he's hurt and wants to change the narrative again, claiming that, in reality, he never wanted to get married after all. Or maybe it's true, and the whole prank situation happened because he's a coward and wanted me to end the relationship for him. The way this information reached me makes me think it's the second option because it wasn't something he made public. It was something he said in private to someone else, like a confession. Apparently, he'd been complaining to his brother about cold feet for weeks before the wedding. His brother, who I always liked, TBH, told his girlfriend, who told her cousin, who happens to be friends with Samantha, one of my bridesmaids. Small world, right? According to this grapevine of information, Duncan was freaking out about being tied down and losing his freedom. Classic commitment phobe behavior that he never once expressed to me. Instead of having a mature conversation about his concerns, he chose to sabotage our wedding day in the most hurtful way possible. If he had just talked to me, we could have postponed, taken some time to think, maybe gone to couples counseling. But no, he had to go nuclear and destroy not just our relationship but my trust in a way that could never be repaired. This doesn't change anything about what happened, but I couldn't keep this information to myself when so many of you have asked for relevant updates. I hope this serves as a relevant update for you. I also hope you're all having a great life. I know I am. Or at least, my life is far better than it would have been if I had married Duncan, the prankster. I can just picture him and his ex-best friend Aaron pulling pranks nonstop. Just the thought of it makes my stomach turn. As for me? I'm doing surprisingly well. I got a promotion at work, all that focused energy had to go somewhere, right? Oliver and I are settled into our new apartment, and I've even gone on a couple of dates with a guy I met in my pottery class. Nothing serious, it's way too soon for that, but it's nice to be reminded that there are decent men out there who don't think humiliating you is the height of comedy. My therapist says I'm making excellent progress in processing all of this trauma, both the old wounds from Aaron and the fresh ones from Duncan. She's been helping me see that what happened wasn't just about a prank, it was about respect, trust, and having my experiences validated. Duncan failed on all counts. So here I am, almost 6 months after what should have been my wedding day, and I can honestly say I'm grateful it never happened. Sometimes the worst things that happen to you save you from something even worse, a lifetime with someone who doesn't truly respect or understand you. Thank you, Reddit, for giving me the courage to stand my ground and for helping me see that I wasn't crazy or overreacting. Your support meant more than you'll ever know. TLDR, ex-fiancé invited my high school bully to our wedding as a prank. I called off the wedding, he slandered me on social media, I set the record straight, went on an amazing solo trip, and now living my best life while justice bit him in the ass when the same bully pranked him at work. Also found out he probably had cold feet and used the prank as a way to sabotage the wedding. Dodged a bullet.